It had been exactly 112 days since Can Yaman and Demet Özdemir had gone their separate ways. The tabloids had written countless headlines, fans had speculated endlessly, but only they knew the truth. Behind the glamour, behind the lights, behind the perfect images on social media, their love had broken under the weight of silence, misunderstandings, and pride. For Can, those 112 days had felt like years. He had filled his schedule with projects, events, gym sessions, interviews, anything to distract himself. He smiled for cameras, answered journalists' questions, and gave the world the confident, unstoppable image it expected. But inside, he was still that man staring at the closed door the night she left. Demet, on the other hand, had tried to bury herself in work too. New roles, new scripts, endless rehearsals. She told herself that if she stayed busy enough, she wouldn't have time to think of him. Yet sometimes, in the quiet of her apartment, when the city outside was asleep, she found herself reaching for her phone. Typing his name. Then erasing it before hitting send. That night in Istanbul, fate played its cruel hand. Can had agreed to attend a private gathering with friends, a promise he couldn't refuse. It was supposed to be safe. Just music, laughter, and a few familiar faces. He walked in with his usual presence, tall, magnetic, commanding the room without even trying. He thought he could breathe. But then, across the dimly lit space, he saw her. Demet. She was standing by the corner, her hair falling naturally over her shoulders, her laughter mixing with the hum of conversations. To him, she hadn't changed. Or maybe she had, but all he saw was the woman who had once been his everything. His chest tightened, his heartbeat quickened, and his hand, holding a simple glass of water, began to tremble. He tried to steady it, but the harder he tried, the worse it got. His fingers betrayed him, shaking uncontrollably as if they were screaming the truth his lips could not. He still loved her. And then it happened. She turned her head. Her eyes met his. Time collapsed. The crowd disappeared. The music faded. It was just Can and Demet, staring across the room, hearts remembering everything their minds had tried so hard to forget. For a moment, Can thought he was dreaming. It couldn't be real, after all these months, after all the words left unsaid, after all the nights he had convinced himself she was gone forever, she was there. Not in a memory. Not on a screen. Not in a magazine. But there, standing across the room, breathing the same air, her eyes locked on his. Demet felt it too. She hadn't expected him. She hadn't prepared herself. She had walked into the gathering thinking it was just another night, another event where she could smile, exchange polite words, and then go home. But when her gaze accidentally drifted across the room and met his, her heart stuttered. It was like 1,000 buried feelings had rushed back to life in an instant. For the first time in months, her mask cracked. She had promised herself that if she ever saw him again, she would be calm, composed, untouchable. But now, her breath caught in her chest, her throat tightened, and she felt her palms grow damp. She forced her lips into the faintest smile, but her eyes betrayed her, because in them lived the truth she had never confessed: she still loved him. Can's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He lowered his glass, trying to steady himself, but even as he clenched his fists in his pockets, the tremors continued. His chest rose and fell faster than he wanted, and he prayed no one else noticed. But Demet noticed. Of course she did. She had always noticed. She remembered those same hands holding her when she cried, brushing her hair back when she was nervous, holding her face the night he first confessed his love. Now they shook, fragile, raw, just like his heart. And something inside her cracked. The crowd around them blurred into insignificance. Laughter, music, conversations, all of it melted away. For them, the room was silent. It was as if the universe had drawn a circle around the two of them, isolating them from the rest of the world. Two people who once shared everything, now standing apart like strangers, yet bound by an invisible thread that refused to break. Demet looked away first, her chest heaving softly, as though that single glance had stolen the air from her lungs. She picked up her glass, tried to laugh at something someone next to her said, but her voice wavered. She felt exposed, raw, as if everyone could see through her. But she couldn't risk another second of holding his gaze, because if she did, she knew the truth in her heart would burst free. Can, however, couldn't look away. His eyes followed her every move. Every tilt of her head, every nervous shift of her fingers, every flicker of her expression. He had once known these details like the back of his hand, and now, watching her, he realized with a painful ache that he still did. She wasn't just another face in the room, she was the face he had memorized, the one he thought he'd never see again. And in that silence between them, though no words were spoken, they both heard everything. The apologies never said. The questions never answered. The love never forgotten. Can couldn't tear his eyes away from Demet. It was as if the whole night had led to this single moment. For months, he had rehearsed it in his head, what he would say, how he would act, whether he would stay strong. But reality wasn't like the rehearsals. Reality had weight, it had breath, it had trembling hands that betrayed every secret of the heart. His fingers wouldn't stop shaking. He pressed them into his pockets, hoping the fabric would hide the tremors, but it didn't. The trembling rose from inside, tied directly to his heartbeat, unstoppable. Someone at his side spoke, asking him a question, but their voice was distant, unimportant. All he could hear was the pounding inside his chest, loud enough to drown out the entire room. And then, against every fear, against every thought that screamed at him to hold back, Can moved. He took a step forward. It was small, hesitant, but it changed everything. The crowd between them seemed to part, the laughter and chatter melting into the background. His eyes never left hers. His stride was slow, steady, but within him a storm raged. What do I say? How do I greet her? Do I smile? Do I pretend it's nothing? Or do I finally say the words I should have said that night? Across the room, Demet saw him move and froze. Her breath caught, her lips parted slightly as if to say something, but no sound came. She had told herself she would be calm if this moment ever came, that she would act composed, untouched. But now, as he closed the distance, she felt her heart hammering so hard it hurt. A voice inside her whispered, "Don't come closer. I can't handle this." Yet another voice, deeper, more desperate, begged, "Please, come. Please, don't let this moment pass." For her, the world blurred. The people around her became shadows, their voices echoes. All that mattered was the space between her and Can, the few meters that suddenly felt like miles, stretched by time, regret, and everything unspoken. Can's steps were deliberate, but his body betrayed him. He tried to run a hand through his hair to hide the trembling. He cleared his throat, hoping to look composed. But nothing could disguise the truth. From the very second he saw Demet again, his hands had been shaking uncontrollably, revealing what his lips still couldn't say, that she still had power over him. And those last few steps he took, felt like the longest walk of his life. Can stopped just a breath away from her. For a second, he wasn't sure if his legs would even hold him. Up close, the effect was overwhelming, her scent, her presence, the way her eyes shimmered under the soft light. It was almost unbearable, because it wasn't a memory, it wasn't a dream. It was real. Demet's chest rose and fell quickly, betraying the calm expression she tried to hold. She clutched her glass tightly, her knuckles pale, not because she wanted the drink but because she needed something to anchor herself. And still, despite every wall she had built in the months apart, her eyes met his and lingered. Neither of them spoke. And yet, in that silence, 1,000 words passed between them. Can opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His throat was dry, the words he had rehearsed for months stuck like stones. He wanted to say "I missed you." He wanted to say "I'm sorry." He wanted to say "Come back to me." But all he managed was a small, shaky breath. His hands betrayed him again, trembling even as he tried to hide them behind his back. Demet noticed. Of course she did. She had always noticed. She remembered those same hands holding her when she cried, brushing her hair back when she was nervous, holding her face the night he first confessed his love. Now they shook, fragile, raw, just like his heart. And something inside her cracked. She wanted to speak too. To ask him why he never called that night. To ask if he still thought of her. To ask if he regretted letting her go. But her lips stayed closed, pressed into a line, because she was terrified that if she spoke, her voice would break, and with it, her entire shield. The room around them seemed to vanish. The crowd kept talking, music played, glasses clinked, but to them, there was nothing else. Just the unbearable closeness of two people who had once been everything to each other and were now pretending to be strangers. Finally, Can managed a single word. Demet. Her name, spoken in that trembling voice, carried more weight than an entire speech. It wasn't just a name. It was an admission. A memory. A plea. And when she heard it, Demet's eyes filled with the shine of unshed tears. Demet. The way Can said her name, it wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was soft, trembling, filled with the weight of everything he hadn't said in months. Just 5 letters, but they carried years of love, of regret, of longing. It was enough to silence the storm inside her. Demet blinked, trying to hold back the tears burning at the corners of her eyes. She parted her lips as if to answer, but her throat betrayed her. No sound came out. The only thing she managed was a sharp inhale, the kind that comes right before you break. Their eyes locked again. And in that gaze, words became unnecessary. Her eyes asked him, "Why didn't you fight for me?" His eyes pleaded, "Do you think I ever stopped loving you?" Her silence whispered, "I waited for you. I still do." His trembling hands confessed, "I never learned how to let you go." The noise of the party faded further. People passed them, laughing, holding drinks, unaware that the greatest drama in the room wasn't on the stage or in the music, it was in the quiet standoff between Can Yaman and Demet Özdemir, standing inches apart, bound by invisible chains of their shared past. Finally, Demet found her voice. Barely a whisper, but it was enough to pierce through him. "Why now, Can?" The question wasn't about the night. It wasn't about the party. It was about everything. Why now, after silence, after distance, after months of pretending, did he stand in front of her, shaking, unable to let her go with his eyes? Can swallowed hard. He didn't have the perfect answer. His chest ached with the truth he wanted to scream, but all he could manage was raw honesty. "Because I couldn't stay away any longer." Her lips trembled. Her glass lowered slowly to the table. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself to look at him not as an ex, not as a stranger, but as the man she had once loved with every part of her soul. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of all the words left unsaid, full of tears never cried, full of love that still lingered, stubborn and unbroken. Demet's question still hung in the air, "Why now, Can?" But her eyes already knew the answer. She had seen it in the way his hands shook, in the way his voice cracked on her name, in the way he looked at her as if she were both his salvation and his punishment. Can wanted to reach out. Every fiber of his body screamed to take her hand, to brush away the single tear threatening to escape her eye. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because if he touched her now, if he pulled her into his arms the way he had 1,000 times before, he wasn't sure he'd be able to let her go again. Demet's breath trembled. Her heart wanted to collapse against him, to forgive, to forget, to go back to the nights when their love felt endless and invincible. But her mind reminded her of the pain. The unanswered calls. The silence that stretched between them like an ocean. She couldn't just erase it with one look, could she? For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. They just stood there, inches apart, drowning in everything unspoken. To the world, they looked like two actors frozen mid-scene. But inside, they were shattering. Demet finally whispered, her voice breaking. "I waited, Can, but you never came." The words hit him harder than any punch. He had rehearsed so many lines in his head, but he hadn't prepared for that. His lips trembled as he tried to answer. I wanted to. Every night, I wanted to. But I didn't know if you wanted me anymore." Her eyes glistened, and for a moment, she almost believed him. She wanted to. Because the truth was, despite everything, her heart had never truly let him go. The silence stretched again, unbearable. And then, almost without thinking, Can's hand twitched forward. He didn't touch her, but the gesture was there, suspended in the air between them. His fingers still shook, a visible sign of his weakness, his vulnerability, his love. Demet looked at those trembling hands and felt her defenses crumble. Those hands had once held her when she was at her weakest. Those hands had once traced her face in the dark, gentle, worshipful. And now, they were shaking because of her. She wanted to take them. She wanted to hold them still. But instead, she stepped back. Just one step. Small, but enough to widen the distance that had once felt impossible. Her eyes lingered on his one last time, her lips trembling as if to say something more, but no words came. She turned, slowly, painfully, and melted back into the crowd. Can stood there, frozen. His chest heaved, his throat burned, his hands still shook. He wanted to follow her, to call out, to fight for what they once had. But his legs wouldn't move. His courage failed him at the final moment. All he could do was watch her disappear, once again, into the noise of the world. And yet, something had changed. That night, for the first time since the breakup, their eyes had spoken. They had both seen the truth, the love hadn't died. It had only been buried. Waiting. Whether that night was the beginning of something new, or just another chapter of heartbreak, neither of them knew. But both of them felt it in their bones. The story of Can Yaman and Demet Özdemir was far from over.